I invite you to hear God's word for us today from the Old Testament book of Joshua, chapter 4. Then Joshua summoned the 12 men from the Israelites, whom he had appointed, one from each tribe. Joshua said to them, "Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan, and each of you take up a stone on his shoulder, one for each of the tribes of the Israelites, so that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, 'What do these stones mean to you?' then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off in the front of the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, there's a couple of elderly couples who have played cards together for years. The gentlemen's names were Ed and Max. Max was the older of the two, and he had some trouble remembering certain things about the rules of the game and which cards you play when and that kind of thing. But then this one night, all of a sudden, he has no trouble whatsoever. So Ed asks him, "Ed, you played so well tonight, you didn't have to ask your wife for any help at all. What happened?" He said, "Oh man, my memory's got so much better since I went to that memory school." I said, "What memory school was that?" Max said, "Oh, that flower, the red one with the thorns, it smells so good. What's that?" And Ed says, "The rose?" He says, Yeah. Turns to his wife and says, "Rose, what was the name of that memory school?" Memory. So important. So elusive. I was a draftsman for a pair of engineers when I was in college. One a civil engineer, the other a chemical engineer. The chemical engineer was brilliant, but he was one of those absent-minded professor types. And so he had this pad that he wrote everything on. And I love the heading of the pad. The pad said, "Things I gotta not forget." And he used it religiously. But God seems to give us this need, this drive to remember important things. And we do it in some really creative kinds of ways. Paintings, photographs, we tell stories, we write poems, we create sculptures. We build things, all in an attempt to remember people, remember events, places, and times. All to keep that memory alive. Our nation's capital is full of monuments and memorials. There are memorials to former presidents. There are memorials for wars that have been fought. There are national monuments all over the country, including Pearl Harbor, Oklahoma City, and New York, among many. And even here in Mount Dora, we have some monuments and memorials. Right down the street, corner of Baker and Fitta, you'll find a four-sided monument. It's dedicated to all those who gave their lives in World War I and II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, Grenada, and Panama. Go just further down the street on Donnelly to the police and fire station, you'll see another memorial to those killed in the line of duty. There are several portions of highways around here that are dedicated in memory of law enforcement officers. Many places around you'll see where we try to remember. And of course, this is Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow's that day will be set aside to remember. To remember those who've given it all for us. To keep that memory alive in our collective conscience. Memorial Day originally started as Decoration Day after the Civil War. Those in the North gathered at the cemeteries and decorated the graves of the war dead with flowers. Then the South, the Confederates did the same. Different days, different months even. But by the early part of the 1900s, that it all merged together as what we now know as Memorial Day, and expanded beyond the Civil War to include all those who have given their lives in service to our country. A pastor in New York by the name of Stan Purdom tells of growing up in Saratoga Springs. He said it's not far from this little town called Victory Mills. And in Victory Mills, there is the Saratoga Monument. It's a monument that remembers the decisive victory of the Continental Army over the British in 1777. He said it's a majestic obelisk of about 155 feet. And he remembers going up there as a kid, 190 steps to the top, and be able to look out this beautiful countryside. He said as a teenager, he and his friends rode their bikes there many times, climbed that obelisk many, many times. But when he was in high school, his family moved to a different state, and until just a few years ago, he had never been back. So on vacation with his family, a wife and two kids, he purposely detoured to that location. And he was so excited, he couldn't wait to share that with his family. He said it was a scorching hot day when they got there. They were driving in a beat-up, borrowed old motorhome, and the AC had gone out. So you can imagine what that trip was like after a few hours. Everybody's hot and sweaty and could care less about anything. So when they arrived there, he tries to get the kids out, and they're like, They look out the window, they see something in the distance and said, it's just like all the others we've seen. His wife said, I don't want to leave the kids alone. I'll stay here with them. You go ahead. You enjoy the memories. He said what she was really more concerned about was where they're going to stay that night, whether or not they can be cool, get those kids into a cool down. He said he walked with disappointment for the memorial. But he kind of consoled himself with the fact that he's going to be able to climb those steps, stand up there again and see that beautiful countryside. The problem was when he got to the base of the monument, the door was closed and locked. It had closed about 10 minutes before they arrived. He said, with great disappointment, he walked back, got into the motorhome, and started to drive away. And then he started thinking about it. He thought, nobody in my family really appreciates that memorial. The kids just thought it was just another big rock. The wife didn't want to be interrupted. He said, I even thought about myself and thought, what it meant to me was just some childhood memories. None of us thought about what it really meant. It was there to honor the lives of those who died in 1777. But doesn't that happen often? We get some distance from events and we begin to forget. It's kind of a natural human thing to do. Memorials get detached from events. The meaning of those things begins to fade, even from our larger collective memories. The same thing, I think, has happened to Memorial Day over time. So often nowadays, people see it as a holiday, a day off work, a 3-day weekend, the beginning of summer. And so few take the time to remember, to honor those who have given their lives so that we can enjoy those freedoms. But we're not the first for that to happen, for sure. In today's Bible reading, you heard the beginning of a memorial. The people of Israel had fled the slavery in Egypt. They'd been in this arduous 40-year-long wandering through the desert, and now they're at this final leg of their journey. They're right there at the promised land. Only one thing stands in their way: the Jordan River. They're on one side, the promised land's on the other. How are they going to get there? Well, God gives some instructions to their new leader, Joshua. And he says, tell the priests, carry the Ark of the Covenant, and when you step into the water will be held back. And sure enough, when they do that, the water stops, and the whole group of Israelites are able to cross on dry land. It was very similar to what happened to that first generation when they left Egypt. And God stopped the waters of the Red Sea on either side so they could walk through. God gave instructions, though, of how they were supposed to remember this time at the Jordan. Before they ever proceeded, God had already told Joshua, I want you to select one person, one guy, from each of the 12 tribes. And then tell them, when the water stops, go out through there, take up one of those stones, heft that thing up on your shoulder, and take it to the other side. So they do that, and Joshua piles them up and calls it a memorial. He says, literally, these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever. Right. You really think that's going to happen? Did Joshua think that that would happen? Because the reality is, the later generations didn't really care. They got some distance from it all and forgot. They weren't part of what happened. They didn't have a memory of that. Just like with that pastor, Purdom, and his family. Nobody was asking, what does this mean? What do these stones mean? And the same thing happens even today. Each new generation comes along, and they're not part of what happened before, so they don't have a memory. It's common for successive generations to forget. Those younger generations don't value it the same way. Understandably so. As you read through the Old Testament, you see that was one thing in particular that they struggled with. The one generation would build a monument, a memorial, for something very special that happened. But then a generation, 2 generations later, they're already forgetting. There's always that hope that those in the next generation are going to ask, what does this mean? But it rarely happens. It was one of those things where, actually this is one of the things that God had consistently as a complaint against the people of Israel. He said, you've forgotten me. It's the failure to remember. But is it even realistic to expect that something that memorializes something of great value to one generation will be of value to the next generation? How can we expect those who weren't even born when the event took place to value something in the same way as those who lived through it? But it's more than just a failure of the individual memory. It's a failure of the collective cultural memory. It's ultimately a failure to remember who we are and how we became who we are. To forget our history is to lose the benefit of learning from it. That old saying is, those who don't learn from history are what? Doomed to repeat. The reality is, the meaning of past events will never be quite the same for those who didn't experience them. And our job is not to force successive generations to simply bow down at memorials. Our job is to help them understand why there's such important meaning in it. How can we help make that pile of stones more than a pile of stones? How do we help people understand that represents a milestone in the journey? It has to do with the stories. The stories about those who lived it. And when those stories are alive, those stories are real, then the stone pile has life. We can't simply demand that other generations listen. We can't demand that they revere a memory that they don't even have. We have to find ways of passing on that memory, of passing on what is the essence of the heartbeat of that memory that we have to others. It's great to remember what something means for me. But I always have to be thinking too, what's it going to mean to the next generation? and the generation after that. Even those later meanings are going to be different. It's still important. Those 12 storms beside the River Jordan, they testified to the fact that God was there. God helped the people. God guided them, watched over them. And the people of that generation had to tell the story. Not just the story, but their own story in the middle of all of that. And that included times of sorrow as well as joy, times of struggle, times when there were doubts, times when they even wondered if God was remembering He had ever made a promise to them. Because that helped lay the foundation to let other generations know that God would be there for them too. Because they're going to experience those times of difficulty. They're going to experience those times of doubt. They're going to experience those times when they wonder, does God even care? And what do they do then? That's when they're supposed to look at the stones. Just that pile of stones. And know that that's a testimony to the fact that God does care. And God will indeed be with them. Those 12 stones on the riverbank were different than all the other stones they saw around. These were stones that were rounded and worn from years of water flowing over them. How do you explain those stones on the riverbank? Those can only be found in the middle of the river. And you can't explain that unless you know the water was diverted or stopped. And someone was able to go out and pick one up and bring it back. And if God did that once, God can do it again. As I said earlier, the first generation leaving Egypt, God divided the sea. Pushed the water back. They crossed on dry ground. Now the second generation gets to enter into the promised land because God stops the water. And they too walk across on dry land. And the stories should ask us, all of us in these successive generations, what waters is God willing to stop for us? What is it that we're going to run against that's going to be the thing that's going to stop us? And we have to rely fully upon God to allow that to happen. Will we trust God to do that? Memorial Day is set apart for us to remember those who have given their lives for our freedoms. Those memorials and monuments that we have remind us of the terrible cost involved in wars. But they can also be an indicator for future generations that we should do everything we can to avoid that, unless there's no other recourse. These monuments can be healing for those who were there and for those whose loved ones were there. It can also be an indicator for future generations. No matter what you go through, there is healing. These monuments are evidence that significant things come at the cost of sacrifice and courage. And it indicates for future generations, to accomplish something of significance, you have to sacrifice. And you have to be willing to have courage in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds against you. Each generation should want the next generation to know what's valuable to them. We hope that our faith in God is one of those things that the next generation will grasp hold of and will become important to them as time goes on. We should want that for every generation because it's our shared memory that becomes the foundation. It's something that they can build upon. But also, that shared memory can act as a springboard. Shoot them to soar to places we couldn't even dream of going. It's so important to share with future generations about these memorials and these special days and these monuments, what the real meaning is. But also to listen to them, to hear their stories, to hear their pains and their confusion, their doubts as well, because there's connection there. Because that's where life is really lived. The monuments and memorials are not just the culmination of the past. They're really the building blocks of the future. To remember in the biblical sense is not just a mental exercise. It's not just pointing out facts and figures. It involves the heart and soul as well as the mind. To remember means, biblically speaking, to reconnect with those events, with the whole totality of who you are, body, mind, spirit. It is to not simply re-experience, but to experience with the understanding that you know the outcome. Because you know God's grace. You know how God has worked in the past? You've got the story. And it's the trust that God will work now and in the future in the same way. That's the core of what Jesus talks about and what we call communion. When he says, do this in remembrance of me. It's exactly what he said. Not just with your head, with your whole being, remember who you are. The history of God's work in our lives, the history of God's work in the world, it's too important to ignore. It's far too important to forget. God has proven over and over again. We've got the stories in Scripture about his love and care. We know in our own life that God demonstrates his faithfulness over and over and over again. What brings peace into our lives is the assurance that God will continue to do that. God will continue to demonstrate love and grace toward us. To have peace, we have to remember the stories and the story. To have that peace, we got to not forget. We always have to remember who we are, whose we are. We have to know who we are as a people. God. Let's pray. Our gracious God, may we never forget. And even as we ask that, we know there will be times when we do forget. Because we've done it in the past. And yet, you never give up on us. You continue to work in us and on us, call us. You continue to nudge us. You continue to get our attention. You continue to remind us who we are, and that we belong to you, that we are your children. And even as we remember that, help us to remember it with our whole being. Help us today. And help us tomorrow to be thankful for what you've given to us, for those who have defended that, for those who have shaped us and molded us and helped us learn to follow you. Lord, may we ourselves, may our lives be a lasting memorial so that when others see us, they don't see us. They see your love, your grace, and your faithfulness. Lord, help us so that we don't forget.